All right, I'm here with Luke Bradford. I'm not going to butcher your exact title at KU. I'm going to let you kind of introduce yourself. But Luke, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, you bet, man. Anytime.
So, what is the exact title for you now? Because I always screw
Uh,
these up with everybody.
I'm pretty sure right now it's just director of sports performance.
Okay, all right, very good. Director of sports
Yeah.
performance, and then currently stay-at-home dad. Right? Everybody's locked
Yep.
down. How is
Stay
that
stay at
going?
home dad slash homeschool teacher. Yeah, you name it.
So that's something I try to talk to some of my friends about. I don't have any children. How is handling your kids right now at home? Because you and I both know you're at work a lot during normal times. We're obviously
Yeah.
switching to something different. How is being at home with the kiddos? How's that working?
You know what? It's that double-edged sword for sure. I'm laying in bed last night, getting her to go to bed, and the conversation inevitably comes up with she's 11. She's 11, and it's hard for us to comprehend what's going on right now, right? Much less an 11-year-old, and it is tough for her to not have her mind steered towards all of the things she's missing out on. Last year in fifth grade, before she moves on to junior high, all these things that were supposed to happen. It's tough for her to not focus on that. But I'm kind of trying to steer her mind back to, yeah, but think of all the things that we are getting to do right now that we wouldn't normally have the opportunity for. And I just mentioned, it's like, and you know what it's like, baseball season. We can spend a lot of time on the road, or at the field, or whatever. And I just flat out said, yeah, but if this didn't happen right now, I would more than likely be at the baseball field right now instead of laying here in bed with you, because it's Wednesday night, and a 6 o'clock game. There's a good chance I'm still at the field at 9 or 9:30. And so I'm doing my best to try to steer back towards just reminding, that practice of gratitude, right? That we hear a lot of people talking about now. Just like, gosh, think of all the things that we are getting to do right now that in a normal spring, during baseball season, we wouldn't be doing. So that it does have its upsides, because we do have a chance to do some of those things.
Yeah, I think at first it was kind of this, I don't want to, freak out mode, if you will. It's not a good term, but a freak out mode when it was like, all right, we're going shelter in place and everybody mad scrambled. And I know you and I touched base a couple of weeks ago, and I touched base with other coaches, and everybody's kind of, it's a mad dash. What do we do? How do we do it? We've never seen this before. And that's completely understandable. And now we're getting into this, like you said, practicing gratitude and looking at the situation, spinning the situation. We're doing the same thing at play. We went through our scramble period. Now it's like, look how much opportunity we have here. And I was talking with a friend of mine last night about how this is really showing us what we truly need. It's showing us what we truly have to have, what we need to operate, who we need to be around. It's kind of a pretty fresh reset button on things that you need, some family time as well. So I'm choosing to start to view it from that way. We're going to come out of this thing and realize that, oh, maybe we were a little spoiled. Maybe we were functioning with a little fluff on the outside that we didn't actually need, that was just causing peripheral energy instead of all the energy focused in one direction. So that's kind of what we're choosing to do from play and from personal standpoint. Are you able to keep touch with your players? I don't know. Is KU allowing y'all to stay in touch? Are you able to do that, or what's going on there?
Yeah, so to some degree, right now we're definitely able to provide some programs, and some guidelines for them to be training at home. Per the Big 12, we're not allowed to do any virtual training, which means we can't get the whole team on a Zoom call and go through a workout together or anything. But I know our sport coaches have a few hours each week where they have the ability to stay connected with them, have team meetings. I'm sure there's some team building things going on, different things that they can do for that purpose, just try to keep the teams connected. But from a sports performance standpoint, we currently aren't allowed to do any of that virtual training, but we can provide programs and still have that platform to give them as much support as what we can, to make sure that they're not also trying to navigate this all by themselves. It's obviously challenging for everybody, and while they're trying to navigate the world of online classes and homework and not having a schedule to them, that's all laid out for them for 7 days a week. Yeah, we'd prefer they not have to try and navigate the physical training world by themselves either. And so we're doing everything that we can, like I said before, putting out some programs that we can send out. I know there's plenty of other universities that have put together some videos, just kind of describing exercises, taking them through different workouts and things, pre-recorded stuff. So I'm kind of in the midst of that too, trying to develop some content to get sent out to these athletes, where in this world where we might be doing some exercises that we haven't normally done in our air weight room, just to, like I said, try to define a couple of other things that they could be doing by themselves. So recording some content and getting it ready to get sent out.
So how are you, because you're having to handle athletes, you still got your volleyball girls, which super high level, very successful, but you've transitioned over the last 12 months into that new role of yours where now you're running an entire department. You're going, I'm sure, to upper admin, or you're having to meet with upper admin as well. If you don't mind me asking, how is that work? How are you handling your staff? And then how is just all of that entire process working? Because now, you had that put on you in the last 10 months, and then now COVID, and it's made it even harder, I assume.
Oh yeah, it's the perfect storm, right? There's no reason to make this transition easy, but I honestly I give credit to our staff for actually making it easy, because they're working hard, and they know that everybody's in the same boat too. So we have been staying connected, at usually at least once a week, staff meetings, everything from programming and what's going on with our teams, or updates from the Big 12. Here's what we can do, here's what we can't do, that kind of thing. Plus jumping into some other continuing ed and things that, like I said, looking on the bright side of things, the time that we otherwise wouldn't have to study some material that we've been wanting to study for a while. So we're staying in contact. We've initiated some independent study projects. We've initiated some collective study projects where we're going through some things together, and so yeah, they're really making it easy on me because of how hard they're working, and they're doing all the things that they can do also to support the teams.
Nice. If you don't mind me asking, what kind of independent? I'm interested. You piqued my interest. What kind of independent projects and studies are y'all doing, man? What are y'all jumping into?
You know what? We just kind of posed it as everybody has their own unique interests and things related to our field that they are particularly passionate about. And so I just kind of opened up with a couple of questions, and one of them was, hey, what's that thing that you would really love to learn about and dive down the rabbit's hole that you just haven't had the time to dive into yet? And so, it kind of started out as just topic exploration. Write down 3 to 5 topics that you're interested in. You'd want to dive down the rabbit's hole, and then kind of start to explore some of those areas and figure out what it is that, now that you have some time available, what do you want to dive into? So it kind of started out like that, and so everybody honestly just kind of picked their own specific topic. And so then that kind of evolved into, okay, so let's go find some resources, relative to your topic. Everything from online courses to articles, research, video content. Is there anybody else in the industry who is particularly knowledgeable at that topic? So some resource exploration, and now we're kind of in the middle of actually uncovering material and doing some studying. And I think ultimately this will lead to then, I prefer it be in person, but if we can't, we'll do a Zoom call and everybody has 30 minutes to present their findings to the rest of the staff. So, you know, we go through the practice not only of research and studying and learning, but then we also go through the practice of public presentation and delivering content to each other. And then what we also kind of talked about is then taking that content and developing some internship curriculum with it, or, you know, for our graduate assistants, some of our young part-time assistants, is that if we can take these and develop some learning outcomes and specific objectives, well, then we just go ahead and create a curriculum for that specific topic and plug it into our internship file. And so then, you know, a year down the road, one of our interns says, hey, I'm particularly interested in this topic. Well, hey, guess what? We've already got some content developed for that. And you know what? Caleb is your guy. So if you're interested in that, let's go through it.
I think that's super fascinating. It goes back to what you're talking about of kind of turning the challenge into a positive. You're going to come away with a wealth of knowledge. And me specifically, selfishly, I like how you set it up, because it wasn't an assigned topic, which you certainly could have done in your leadership role. Say, hey, I'm going to assign you, you know, RPR or, you know, whatever, FRC or whatever we want to go into, or VBT, and you assign it to each person. I like the fact that you just kind of left it open and was like, hey, what interests you? Because you're going to get a whole lot more out of that person that's interested, because their passion is into it. I know if somebody just assigned me a topic, I would complete the task because I was asked to complete the task, but maybe not to the fullest potential that it could be. And when you're talking about putting this in intern manuals or putting this in intern files, I mean, you want it to be as comprehensive as possible. Are you specifically participating? Are you diving into a certain subject?
Yeah, I actually am. I wanted it to be all inclusive, and you know, give truly everybody the chance to not only present but learn from each other. And while I definitely give a lot of credit to our staff, and I'm excited to hear what they come up with, I'm not above diving in and learning myself. I got to hold myself to the same level of accountability that everybody else is too, right? So why not dive in and get some extra learning out of it?
So diving in, like, yeah, I'm with you, and I'm glad that, again, leadership role, you're also doing what everybody else is doing, because we're constantly learning, constantly growing. I mean, getting to talk to other coaches, that's what the great ones do. You never stop learning. I do have somewhat of a programming side. So you've got volleyball and baseball.
And men's golf.
And men's golf. Okay, so that was your third. I couldn't remember what your third was. Have you dove into, have you researched this idea of microdosing, controlling stressors across sport to weight room, where you're trying to marry up what's going on in the court with what's going on in the weight room, keeping things short? Are you still staying pretty structured? Have you dove into any of that at this point?
For how we're currently programmed, or for how we programmed 6 months ago before all of this?
We're taking COVID out of this. Currently, when you have access to all the things that you want access to, I know that that's a huge hot button topic, or it's a growing topic right now, is trying to marry these stress stimuli across the entire spectrum. Have you dove into any of that at this point?
The short answer is yes, but I guess to what extent, it depends on how you want to disseminate the definitions of terms. You know, I think there's a lot of people that would discuss microdosing in entirely different contexts. So it depends on how you really want to kind of dive into that, and the way you're talking, whether, you know, practice stressors and loads are integrated in with the weight room loads. I think that varies from team and is pretty largely dependent on how the head coach of that sport wants to operate. With some sports, you know, we have great communication, and that, just really it's daily communication, and we talk about what's going on at practice. Here's the upcoming competitions. Here's our travel schedule. All these factors that play into the load on the athlete. And then there's other teams that it's not as much of an influence there, and it's say our team is going to be in the weight room 3 days a week, and what you do won't influence what we do in practice, and so they're a little bit more independent. So I think a lot of that comes down to the communication between the performance coach and the head coach, and how they want to integrate. We try to integrate that as much as possible. We're constantly talking, our performance coaches about making runs up to the sport coaches' offices. We call them flybys, just kind of that daily check-in, even if it's 30 seconds of, hey, do you need anything from me? Is there anything I need to know here for the upcoming schedules? So we do talk a lot about that, and we try as much as we can to communicate with our sport coaches and integrate what their plans are with what our plans are. So is that kind of the answer you were going at?
No, that's, you're answering it, and 100% I understand the communication that if you and the head coach want to streamline it, or if they want to streamline it, certainly makes it a lot easier. I'm just always curious, and I guess I probably should have started the first question. So I only trained volleyball collegiately for 2 years, I think, while I was doing it. And one of the things that I always struggled with, and probably because I didn't dive deep enough into it, how do you handle the amount of times that they're performing a plyometric in practice and in games? And then when you bring them in, not only from a muscular standpoint, because we know that you stress fractures, we know feet get messed up, low backs get messed up from jumping, but then also from kind of the neural response where you're just performing so many explosive movements over and over for your outside hitters and mids. Are you doing anything specific in the weight room that's trying to help those? Are you splitting kids up? How are you approaching that? Because that was always something I never dove deep enough into, and I was always curious about.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough one to kind of plan and manage, because practice is one of those big keys, right? And even if, okay, I talk with our coach and I know that they've got roughly a 2.5 hour practice scheduled that day, and we can talk about, hey, this is going to be a very offensive day. The pins and the middles are going to get quite a few jumps. It's at the same time, there's no set number of jumps that they're going to take on. It might be dependent on the drill. It might be dependent on the amount of time that they're in that drill. And, so there's really kind of no way to predict that. So I guess in a very general sense, without maybe getting too specific right off, I kind of operate that when we are truly in our off season, so our 8 hour period, and the majority of their work is in the weight room, that's when we get the majority of our plyometric skills done. But with a very standard approach in that early off season, January, February, we're working on our landings. We're working on controlling those forces and preparing the body to be able to accept those kind of landing forces. And then over the course of the year, gradually transitioning that into more of your true plyometric. But then as we get into our spring in season, so we're in 20 hours, I cut our jump volume way down, just to accommodate the fact that they are in practice. And so, week to week, regardless of how many jumps they are getting on the court, I know ours is going to be so minimal in the weight room that it won't have any negative effect on what they're trying to do in the court, nor will the number of jumps that they're experiencing on the court have any kind of an impact on what we're trying to do in the weight room. So, I'm not going to say I completely cut them out, because we are doing some things to specifically work on that skill of jumping and landing. But again, the volume is so low that it's not going to have any impact one way or the other. And then as we get out of our spring 20-hour period, I'll definitely give them a chance to kind of rest and recover from those impacts. You mentioned kind of the stress fractures and the overuse type of things that can happen from a lot of the plyos. So I will give them some time to control that, because just because the stress is removed from the court doesn't mean we need to immediately throw it right back on in the weight room. So it is kind of a ebb and flow throughout the year. And then as we get into programming for the remainder of their year leading up to the season, then I start throwing that back in with some strategic volume management, going up and down.
I get you. Do you fool around with two questions? Do your DSs and liberos do a different program? Are they following the same program as your pins and middles, or are they completely separate?
There's some things that are similar. Again, I'm kind of a simpleton, with that regard, and that I do see the value of just overall athleticism. So there's some things that our DSs and liberos will do the same as our pins and middles and setters, and then there's other things where I will separate them out and make that a little bit more, I guess, specific to what they're doing. But some of that though too is dependent on what they're doing if they're in their 20-hour period. So I guess maybe one of the more specifics that I didn't mention earlier is that we do with our team use the VERT system, which monitors jumps and some training loads in there. So each day at the end of practice, I'll get that information, exactly how many jumps that they went through, how many jumps above 15 inches that they went through. And so I can take into that information what we might do the next day or, in the coming days. And so with that, if it's a day where, our front row players, didn't get as many jumps as, another day, then their program might look a little bit more similar to the DS. Whereas if it's a day, where I do need them to jump and do a little bit more explosive work, then that's where we kind of separate some things out.
I got you. The second part I was going to question about, and again, I'm just because I'm curious about it, stuff that I didn't do when I still trained college guys. Do you fool around with any of the kind of isometric max effort stuff, pin pulls or pin pushes? And then do you fool around with any of the concentric only jumps or other lifts to try to mitigate some of the soreness or some of the fatigue that the eccentrics can cause? And this is not just in volleyball, but in all of your sports as well.
Yeah, for quite a while, I've been interested in implementing some of the concentric only. I love that kind of thing where we get the neural stimulus of the concentric without the mechanical stress of the eccentric, especially with our in-season models. So I am a big fan of doing some of that and have been doing some of that with teams for a while. I've been interested in some of the isometric stuff for several years now. Experimenting on myself mostly, but over the course of the last year, I'll probably leave it at that for about the last year, implementing some other things with teams in that regard. So yeah, some isometric pulls into pins, some more eccentric isometrics for teaching and body position early on in the off season. Really kind of getting into, I'm not going to say going to the extreme of what maybe Evo Sport was well known for several years back, with any extreme long hold isometrics, but getting 30 seconds, 45 seconds eccentric. Again, there's something about a relatively long hold isometric that will teach somebody about their body position real quick, because you start to feel things that are burning that they might not have otherwise noticed. And so that is a really good way to teach body position early in the off season when you need them to get in certain positions and at least be somewhat conscious of how they're pushing into the floor and what muscles they're using to create that.
Yeah, I never went with the isometrics we used to do. We just called them oxidative work or aerobic work, where we would try to do basically super slow mo hip hinges or squats, but stay into that aerobic, and the set may last a minute, and it's just kind of moving up and down super slow, like you said, just so that you can feel these different positions in your hips, and this is what it actually feels like to fire your hip in this position, not just flow through it willy nilly. How are you? Well, before I transition to that or my question, sorry, I'm a little scatterbrained because we've got a lot of good stuff going on. With your pins and middles, do you treat the shoulder the same way you treat your baseball pitcher's shoulder? Is there some crossover there?
Do I treat them the same? No. Are there a whole lot of similarities? Yes. You know, the volleyball attack is not throwing a baseball, and throwing a baseball is not hitting a volleyball, but the shoulders do go through some fairly similar stressors. Swimming is kind of in that same boat. I've worked with our swim team for such a long time here too, that there definitely was a lot of crossover, but it's not the same. And so, you know, I definitely am able to kind of copy some aspects of one program into the other and translate things, because the way the shoulder is designed to move is the same. That's a human skill, not a sports skill. Exactly what stress that shoulder incurs during their sport, that's where it's a little bit different. So especially early on in the off season, when we're just trying to promote healthy shoulder motion, then all of those things transfer, even if it's not an overhead sport. You know, those other sports, they could stand to have some of that too. So then it's more of that gradual progression from early off season to preseason, where things start to shape a little bit differently. And in addition to the fact that, you know, with the majority of our pitchers on the baseball team, I know what their pitch counts are. I know what those kind of things are. And so our weekly volume, I can modify a little bit more, where with volleyball, I can't guarantee how many swings they're going to take or how many serves they're going to have. You know, swimming, I got no way of knowing how many strokes they took in the water each day. I can know what the plan of the practice in the water is that day, but again, that's not really information that I have. So with the pitchers, I have the ability to manage their weekly loads to just a much more specific degree.
That makes, I mean, and obviously I worked with baseball, it makes sense because you got, man, baseball and the data that we're getting now on the slow-mo cameras.
Yeah.
Man, it's the analytics side of baseball is starting to get really, really cool. Can be a little overbearing at times, but it's starting to get real cool with what we're doing. So the drive line, so do y'all dive into the drive line, weighted ball stuff with your baseball guys? Do y'all do that with your pitchers at all?
We don't directly guide it, but you know, obviously the baseball world is, you know, very influential as well. So, you know, I will say that several of our guys do partake in some of that. But I think it's kind of more of a, you know, we give them the freedom to include some of that within their throwing program. And so really they kind of have a chance to pick the things that they like and eliminate the things that they don't. But we haven't specifically guided their program through that, and, you know, gone, hey, here's going to be our fall throwing program, and it's going to be a part of it.
Because I'm curious, and going back a little bit to volleyball, they're obviously two different things. They're two different stressors, but it is a shoulder on why. So in golf, I don't know how long ago, because I know you work with golf, but when I was still working with it, swing speed's big deal. Vertical jump as opposed to swing speed has a correlation. And then also the weighted sticks started to come in. I know David Donatucci down in Florida was working with Auburn a bunch using the weighted sticks. And then so we've seen weighted balls come into baseball. Do you think some sort of weighted ball or weighted method is going to make its way into volleyball for arm speed to try to create more power, or do you think that's just kind of the outlier that's going to stay by itself?
If I had to say right now, I hope it does not. It's two extremely different different types of acceleration, where, you know, if we're talking about throwing a baseball, that baseball is in the hand through the entire motion, and you're not just accelerating the arm, you're accelerating the ball in the hand. Whereas with volleyball, you're accelerating an arm and then having an impact with the ball. That creates a different type of shoulder stress because it's a sudden impact on the shoulder versus I guess an accelerated load on the shoulder and the elbow for that matter. So I just have a feeling that the impact of a weighted ball would be quite a bit different, particularly maybe on the elbow, than it would be with the baseball.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it now, that makes sense. It's just, it interests me when you have carryover from one thing to another, and from one sport to another. And I know I've run into some volleyball coaches that have actually, you know, they'll put people on swing counts, they'll put people on actual 7-day programs, they'll put pins and middles on 7-day programs where they're supposed to have heavy days and lighter days, where it's almost like a bullpen day and it's almost like a game day type deal, and having flush routines. I just didn't know if you had heard of any weighted implements starting to come into the volleyball world that's coming from baseball. So it's interesting to hear about that. Do y'all's guys use any of your golfers, are they using weighted clubs or weighted sticks and working on swing speed that way?
You know, the golf world is kind of like a lot of things. They've got all kinds of implements, right? And I guess it is kind of tough too, because in that world, you know, so many guys have swing coaches back home that they still stay in touch with, and they're doing things with. And so I don't know that I could say specifically they are or they are not. I know there are some things that we have talked about with our coach on, you know, whether or not it would be good to implement. And I do think there's some value in some of those, either weighted sticks or the sticks with the chains. There's a lot of different things that are out there. I do think there's some value in that for creating the leverage it takes to develop swing speed. I just couldn't say specifically how much they are, particularly if they're off campus.
Right. Do you and I think alike in the fact that an athlete is an athlete for the most part, and then there's probably 10% difference from sport to sport, but 90% of the time you have to train the same things, whether it's hip hinge, squat, single leg, carry, core. Do you approach your golfers that way as well? Do you try to stay more the TMI route, where you're just working on certain aspects of their FMS or TMI score, or are you just training them like an athlete?
I'm going to say that's probably a good mix of both. But of all of the teams that I have, well, no, I guess I can't really say that. It is one of the teams, though, where I will kind of steer things a little bit more away from just plain general athleticism, because it is truly just such a unique skill. And there's so many different body types, right, that could be successful in golf. And there's those physical characteristics that really probably have no impact on whether they can create a repeatable golf swing or not. And so I guess the short answer is yes, I coach them like athletes. And, you know, part of that is our head golf coach. He loves our guys being in the weight room. He wants to see them getting stronger. He wants to see them moving some weight and working hard. So we do some deadlifts, some trap bar deadlifts. We do a little bit of just those big basic skills. But then I think from an accessory movement standpoint, that's where I probably steer things a little bit differently. And so we'll have a lot more hip mobility, thoracic mobility, some of the, you know, just specific trunk control with regards to rotation than what I would for the volleyball team or the swim team, some things like that. So again, from just a general strength and athleticism standpoint, yeah, we're very fundamental. We do all the squat, hinge, push, pull, lunge, right? And some loaded carries. But then again, with our accessory movements, that's where we take things and get a little bit more specific and precise.
I got you. I mean, that makes sense. And to be honest, when I was still working with men's and women's golf, that was kind of how we approached it. I tried to put a focus on vertical explosion, whether it be a trap bar deadlift, kettlebell swing, something, because of the correlation between swing speed and that. And then we got a bunch into the mobility, functional range conditioning is something that I dove into hard with golfers. With regard to what we're dealing with right now and just my past experience and knowing how tough it is to keep a baseball player in shape, specifically to throw and to perform rotational explosiveness, how are you handling that right now? And are you just basically, and to be honest up front, there's people that have basically said, I'm scrapping as long as we are in quarantine, and when they come back, we're going to start square zero and try to build from there. Are you trying to give your kids things that they could do to somewhat keep them ready to go? Because I mean, Summerball is now in jeopardy. I've got to assume. Yep. And then, like I was talking to Josh Sear, not too far from you, we were talking about the fact that Summerball's in jeopardy because now you may need your guys to get innings in the fall, just because you need your guys to get innings and you need them to get it back. How are you approaching all of that? Because I have zero envy of your position trying to figure this out.
Well, I think if we're talking specifically baseball now, with regards to that summer ball and fall ball, and I kind of have to just take a step back and look at the larger picture. On one hand, I could say, okay, yeah, let's scrap the conditioning and we'll just start again in the fall because we still have 6 months to get ready for January. And 6 months, as you know, is plenty of time to get in good shape for a baseball season. So, the very large picture is just that. We have till January now, really, to get ready for our season. But as you mentioned, though, too, if summer ball is not in the picture, then obviously our coaches are going to want to get these guys some innings on the mound during the fall. They're going to want our hitters to see, live pitching and get some of those at bats in the fall. So I don't know what that will become, but I got to believe that that's going to be in the picture. So I don't think that I can completely eliminate it right now. But I'm not going to say I'm a guy who's thinking about it as, oh my gosh, we've got 9 months till our season starts. Let's really get our work done now. I don't feel like we have to grind them into dust now either. So again, I just take a step back, look at the bigger picture. Is that one, when we get back in August, I've still got plenty of time to get them in shape. But two, we do have an opportunity to do some things right now. And so I am sending them things to work on the conditioning aspect of what they're doing. I just have to rethink my long-term progression of, and what we're doing right now. I don't see the need to go out and run 2,400 yards of extensive tempos. So we just don't need that kind of volume. I'm not concerned about that. But what I do see is the value of that conditioning and its impact on what they could do in the weight room. And that's the thing that I a lot of times take away from conditioning for sports that really don't have a major conditioning component, so to speak, like what a basketball or a football would. So I don't always take the mindset that our athletes have to be in unbelievable physical condition to play their sport. But you know what? They do have to be in some pretty unbelievable physical condition to knock out 5 sets of 5 in a back squat with, some pretty reasonable loads, because that rest period and how well they recover from their third set to their fourth set when it starts getting really tough, that's when I need them in shape, because the fourth and fifth sets of, you know, an RDL or something, they got to be able to come back and put their work in with the bar.
So you bring up a point that, again, just talking about things that fascinates me. I've been, the last few years, been pretty hung up on, you know, we ran away, the last 5 years, we ran away from aerobic work because we said everything was explosive and power, and that's what sport is for the most part. For the last couple of years, I've been focusing back in on the aerobic part for the recovery standpoint. So you've got to have an aerobic base because it's going to help with just a better heart rate, better output as far as each pump goes. You're going to be able to flush things out of the system better. So with that in mind, are you still trying to train aerobic at least sometimes? Are you going through phases? Are you blocking it? Are you completely eliminating it? I know that, you know, Zach down here in Fort Worth pretty much completely eliminates aerobic. Are you one of those guys that has thrown it to the wayside? I just want to hear your thoughts on it. I'm not sure there's a right or wrong answer.
I guess we're going to kind of get back into that conversation of define how we're training the aerobic system. You know, do we go on 30-minute runs? No. But, you know, do we adopt kind of that Charlie Francis high-low model of we're going to run some extensive tempos and we're going to focus on how well we recover the system between those? Yes. And, you know, as you mentioned, that system is the biggest aspect of recovery. You know, okay, yeah, we're a very explosive sport, but it's a repetitive explosive sport. And so the ability to repeat that explosive power is based on that other system. You know, it's not, we're not shot put or discus throwers where we're, you know, going to go out and take a few throws and competition is over. It is repetitive, and with baseball, several hours at a time. So yeah, you know, and you go back to just the basis of the energy systems, they're all working all the time. So we can't really just exclude one of them or the other, but it's how we develop that aerobic system, and that's in our minds. Again, I kind of go back to a lot of the Charlie Francis models of what that repeat power is all about, and it's about how well we can recover between reps.
Okay, I'm glad I'm not going insane thinking about that.
Yeah,
because I know you know what I'm talking about, because we did go through a period there where it was like this attack on. It wasn't necessarily the aerobic system, but it got attached to aerobic system. It was an attack on, like you said, the 30-minute run that we need to probably get away from. And I'm happy that we've gotten away from that, but somehow the aerobic system got lopped into that. And it was, to me, it was a little head scratching because of it didn't make sense. Like you said, all energy systems are working all at one time, and they all stack on top of each other. And if you have a weakness one spot, it's only going to affect the rest of the spots. How are you keeping tabs on your athletes right now, I guess is the question, without getting too loaded? Like, are you one-on-one talking to them? Are you Zoom meeting with them, or how are you approaching that right now?
Well, right now, that's the tough part. Again, you know, per the Big 12 policies, is that we're not allowed to keep tabs on them. You know, as far as having them check in after workouts or report back any of their sessions or anything. So the best I can do is send them programs. As I think I mentioned before, kind of working on uploading some content in terms of descriptions and more of the technical progressions of what they're doing. So communicating from me to them as much as I can or feel the need to, and then, you know, just bank that they're doing their work, and when they get back, we'll be ready to move on. I think our sport coaches can communicate with them more than what I can right now. So I got to rely on communication from our sport coaches.
That seems really odd that we go from, you can communicate year round with them when you're, I guess, in normalcy, but now that we're in COVID, you can't communicate, but the coach can communicate with them year round. even though that's somewhat flipped when we're actually in the building.
Yeah, I think it comes down to is how they're defining their sessions right now. And so as of right now, all strength and conditioning is considered voluntary. And so then, we're not allowed to take roll call or keep tabs on any of their voluntary workouts right now.
That's a good thing. It could be frustrating. I could see it from your side. I don't know. Transitioning off of that, how are you taking care of yourself right now? I mean, are you able? Do you got a nice little gym get up in your garage, or I assume you're in your basement. Do you got a little get up that you can stay fit in, or is it all just trying to make it work right now?
No, I'm pretty lucky. I am in my basement, and I slowly over the years I have been amassing a few things here and there. So I do have a barbell with some bumper plates, some squat standards, and just a few small dumbbells, a few small kettlebells, some club bells. I've got enough that I can get some very reasonable work in down here. So that's no problem. Pull up bar.
Keep you sane. Because
Yeah.
I think that's what we're all trying to do right now is just stay sane.
Right.
All right,
Of course, it's interesting though. Again, I've got the equipment available, but still, we kind of opened up speaking about is that I do still have the rest of the world going on too, and so if we're doing our best to keep the little girl with some homework type of things too, and so as much as I would like to sit here and say, oh yeah, I've got all this time available, I'm working out twice a day, I mean this is great. Well, it's not real life, and so some parts of the day where I'd love to be down here working out, I can't because I gotta be upstairs going through some math facts or anything else like that.
That's what I keep teasing with, or not teasing, but I keep talking with all my friends that are in any different situation, and everybody, for whatever reason, everybody thinks that just time is like, oh, you have all this time in the world right now, you can do whatever you want. It's
anything you want.
Yeah, you can do anything you want. I'm looking at them kind of head cocking, going, no, I mean, you still have to get work done. You still have responsibilities.
You still got work to do. It's still developing programs for the athletes, communicating with our staff. Like I say, we're working on our independent study projects. We're actually developing more content for our staff right now than what we normally would. So there's still a lot going on. It's not, I'm not going to say it's a 70-hour work week like if we were in baseball season, but there's still a lot going on and plenty to do. And then again, you factor in the rest of our personal lives that there's other stuff going on.
I know that the personal lives, my wife is getting used to, I'm home, which we travel a bunch with PLAE, going around place to place and seeing coaches. I'm home, so she thinks that I'm not having to work, and she's still transitioning and getting used to the fact that just because I'm home doesn't mean I'm able to just do whatever you want me to do, and at whatever time, that there's certain structured times that I have to be. So we're getting through that. We're working through that. This has been a fun, like I said, I don't know if we were recording yet or not. I think it's going to end up, we're going to come out of this and we're going to be a lot better for it. It's showing us what we need, and it's showing us what is truly vital to function with, which personally I think is going to be really good for society as a whole. We just have to figure it out.
Right.
So, well, man, I appreciate you talking to me. I haven't got to nerd out for a while and talk actual strength and conditioning for a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. So I appreciate you getting to talk to me and catching up with me.
Yeah. You bet. Same.
Somebody had mentioned, are they still kicking around the idea of a fall league, like trying to play games in the fall?
I don't have an answer for you on that. I'm not sure.
All right. I didn't know. That would cause so many headaches just thinking about that schematically. But man, when next time I come up to Kansas, which shouldn't be too long, when they let me out of this shelter in place, we'll have to go grab some lunch sometime and keep catching up.
Absolutely. Our facility is always open for you, man.
Appreciate it, Luke. You have a great rest of your day, man.
All right, you too. Thanks.